Now that we've gone over the purple dragon, I think it's time we discuss the future of the orange marsupial. Vicarious Visions said it themselves: if the Crash N.Sane Trilogy sells well, then they'll think about making new Crash games, and seeing as it's reached the top of the sales charts for its month, I think it's safe to say that we might be getting a new Crash game. What exactly would that new Crash game contain though? Well, that's why we're here today. This is the top 10 things a new Crash Bandicoot game should contain. Number 10. Make the game play and control like the originals. This much is sort of obvious, but I still have this irrational fear in me that Vicarious Visions will try to go experimental and mess with the Crash Bandicoot formula. While I don't discourage this for future Crash releases after the first new game, heck, one of my favorite Crash games is Crash Twinsanity, I think we should still try to stay close to the original formula of the first 3 games, and get more of an experimental vibe at a later date. I should iterate though that I don't want Vicarious Visions to drastically change the formula. Crash of the Titans be damned. Rather, I'd invite them to take risks later on, whilst keeping the same style of platforming Crash is known for. Again, see Crash Twinsanity. Number 9. Give us more of an expansive hub world with activities to do in it. Speaking of Crash Twinsanity, I feel the new Crash Bandicoot game should have some sort of hub world not dissimilar to the one found in Twinsanity. As far as I'm concerned, most fans reacted positively to that change, and a living, breathing hub world will make the game feel far more adventurous than the lifeless, cybernetic hub worlds of Crash 2 and 3. Well, it's not to say that they're entirely lifeless, they're just sort of not as large or as lived in as the other hub worlds in the series. If you're going to make a larger hub world, also make sure to give us activities to do inside of it, so that the hub doesn't feel completely pointless. Why not insert some extra vehicle races, or maybe some bite-sized platforming challenges that allow for some extra goodies that are separate from the main levels, sorta like the rainbow scales in the Ty the Tasmanian Tiger hub world. In fact, make the hub world sort of like Ty the Tasmanian Tigers, but don't make it as big or as empty. Remember to keep the platforming levels themselves as quick and accessible as possible while navigating the hub world. Number 8. Add in multiple characters and make them play slightly different to Crash. Vicarious Visions had a brilliant idea with adding a playable Coco to the original trilogy, and while I'm fine with her controlling the exact same as Crash in that game, a new game could allow for some differences in controls. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to change the controls to make it so that she controls completely different to Crash. Just give her a few differences that make playing as her feel slightly different to Crash. What exactly those differences should be, I'll leave that up to Vicarious Visions to decide. Also, bring back Crunch and make him playable. I love that guy. He was the best part of Dr.Cortex. Number 7. Less vehicle levels. This might be a controversial pick, but I'm someone who prefers the more platforming-centric Crash 2 compared to the more varied and zany Crash 3. I'm not against having vehicle levels entirely, but make them as scarce as possible. Maybe 1 for every 5 levels or so. Keep in mind that I'm mostly talking about levels where the entire point of the level is to ride the vehicle. This doesn't include having a level that's mostly platforming with some vehicles sprinkled in. See levels like Hang 8 for reference. Number 6. Keep the superpowers idea from Crash 3. I feel as if the superpowers from Crash 3 gave you a large incentive to complete the game, as well as allow for more expansive exploration of the levels you were previously in. I'd be fine with the exact same powers from Crash 3 coming back in of themselves, but if Vicarious Visions feel as if they designed a game that fits more with a completely different set of superpowers, then I'm also in support of expanding upon the idea as well. Just try not to have some superpowers like some of the ones in Wrath of Cortex. I mean, seriously? Who the hell is asking for a tiptoe power in order to be able to walk on nitros? If you're gonna make a new set of superpowers, make them fun to use, not game-breaking, and have them play a role in not only the exploration of the levels themselves, but in the exploration of the hub world as well. Number 5. Lots of varied bonus rounds in the levels. I don't know about any of you, but I for one absolutely love my bonus rounds in the Crash games. Personally, I can't get enough of them, which is why I'd love to see the multiple bonus rounds from Crash 2 make a return. There were tons of ways to access the bonus rounds in that game, whether it be some sort of hole in the ground, or just a general question mark floaty platform thing that brought you to the level. This point can also extend to keeping the death routes, but make sure to actually make the death routes challenging and not sprinkle nitros everywhere like in Wrath of Cortex. Number 4, create new villains but keep the old ones as well. Make sure that, while the storyline is original, to not stray too far from the characters of the original Crash Bandicoot. Keep folk like Uka Uka and Dr.Cortex, but also remember to add in some kind of new threat akin to either the elemental masks from Wrath of Cortex, or Entropy from Crash 3. It would probably make the game feel too similar to the originals if the villain was solely just Dr. Cortex and villains from the previous games returning, so try and have some unique villains. Number 3, unique enemy fodder! This ties into the unique villain point I was talking about earlier, but I also think that there should be some sort of unique enemy fodder as well. What would really be interesting is if the enemy fodder also tied into the new villains, unlike the older Crash games which just had some sort of enemy fodder come out of nowhere. This doesn't mean you should get more lazy with the enemy fodder. This doesn't mean you should get more lazy with the enemy fodder. Rather, I think this should encourage more creativity in trying to figure out how to tie in the fodder with the villain him/herself. Number 2, make getting all the platinum relics mean something more than just a percentage/achievement. One thing I really don't like about the original Crash games is that you have all the relic challenges, but they don't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Well, besides bragging rights. Having an actual incentive to collect the relics would be a fantastic addition to this new Crash game. Perhaps it could be something like a debug mode, or how about an alternate skin for Crash that returns him back to his low-poly PlayStation 1 form. Number 1, keep the graphical style similar to the N.Sane Trilogy. The N.Sane Trilogy did the best job it could at bringing Crash into the world of HD, and I feel as though Vicarious Visions really shouldn't mess with the style it has going on right now, and go for a completely unique style when it comes to making this new Crash game. On the other hand, I'm not entirely against changing a couple aspects of the characters based on what the storyline or other aspects of the game have to say. Basically what I'm saying is that N.Sane was a step in the right direction for nailing the look of Crash, and they should continue to expand on what makes N.Sane look so sublime and great in the eyes of the fans. I don't really enjoy ending these videos with a generic sentiment, so here's a rubber duck spinning around the screen for no reason. Hit the sub button if you thought this was actually good, and I'll see you in the next one.